Assalamualaikum and good morning to Dr. Munira. Today, my partners Ashikin and I will be presenting on our review article which titled A Review on Challenges and Strategies in Achieving Food Security. Before we going into more deeper, let me explain what is food security is. Food security is a situation in which all people at all times have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food to meet their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. In short, food security is the availability of food and one's access to it. Food security encompasses the elements of food availability, food access, food utilization, and also food stability, in order to avoid malnutrition and also to prevent insecurity. Food availability implies that there is an available of sufficient food supply, either it is produced locally or import from other places. The second element, food access, refers to having sufficient resources such as income to obtain appropriate foods for a nutritious diet. Next, food utilization is people must have access to a sufficient quantity and diversity of foods to meet their nutritional needs, but must also be able to eat and properly metabolize such food. Food also may be available and accessible to people who are able to utilize it effectively, but to avoid an increase in malnutrition and in order for people not to feel insecure, this state of affairs, which is food stability, needs to be standstill rather than temporary or subject to fluctuations. We move on to the objective and the significance of the review article. For the objective, we want to determine the challenges in achieving food security. Next, we also want to review the measures that implemented in achieving food security. For the significance of the review article, we want to understand the need for adopting a holistic approach to prevent from food insecurity over the world and also to achieve food security by providing the importance of implementation of any action in improving the aspects of food security. Firstly, we will look at the challenges in achieving food security. Achieving food security is continuous to be a challenge, not only for the developing country, but also the developed world. The difference lies in the magnitude of the problem in terms of the severity and also the proportion of the population affected. I will divide the challenges in achieving food security into two parts, which is the first is in terms of Africa, and the second is the challenges for ASEAN. So this is the part for the challenges in achieving food security in Africa, which I divided into three parts, which is physical, economic, and also social. But these three parts mainly is coming from the supply side factors rather than the demand side factors. So for the physical parts, the most challenges is the underdeveloped agricultural sector. It is estimated that 95% of the food in sub-Saharan Africa is grown under the rain-fed agriculture. Hence, the food production is vulnerable to bad weather conditions. Besides, there is an overall decline in farm input investment that include fertilizers, seeds, and also technology adoption. Access to fertilizer use is constrained by market liberalization and also trade policies where they increase the price of fertilizer. The soil is also continue to degrade due to zero fertilizer and also water, and this lead to reduction in the productivity of the farms. So for the economic parts, barriers to the market access is the second challenges that smallholders have to overcome. Other barriers besides that is stated in the point is include the market standards, limited information, and requirements for large initial capital investment. Besides, the farmer is forced to meet objective standards such as size, quantity, and also the quality. Besides, in terms of economic, the effects of globalization is another level of challenges in achieving food security in Africa. When there is globalization, liberalization will comes into the markets. This is due to dumping of heavily subsidized production in the developing countries and premature exposure of upcoming industries to competition from producers in both developed and developing countries. For social parts, the disease and infection is considered to be the challenges as it is continue to plague the African continent. So the disease such as malaria, TB, HIV or AIDS is not only affected the food access but also reduce the time for farmers or people to work. So this is the challenges in achieving food security in Asia. This section is divided into two parts, which is supply side factors and also demand side factors. For the supply side factors, the first challenges is much related to agriculture, which declining trends in agriculture production and crop productivity. Some of the main underpinning causes of the weakening of output growth is environmental factors, scarcity of resources, changes in climate change, and extreme weather conditions, which adversely affect production growth. Next, the loss of cropland to urbanization. The significant loss of cropland can be attributed to rapid urbanization. This shift from rural to urban is prompting land conversion to non-agricultural uses, infrastructure expansion, land use readjustments, all of which move land away from the agriculture sector. The rural population engaged in the agriculture sector is showing a decreasing in number and is forecast to abate further to only 45% in 2020. So since labor is an important input for food production, the decline in farming population poses a threat to food production capacity. Plus, there is also growing concern about maturing age of the farmer population. Next, in terms of policies causing food supply disruption and price hikes, these interventions of the government resulted in distorting and market efficiency in the long term. Besides, underinvestment in agricultural research is one of the challenges in achieving food security in Asia, where it is indicated that greater investment in agricultural sector and development will also be crucial to bring about innovations and technological advances needed for modernizing and developing the agricultural sector. In order to achieve food security, food production is a challenge that we cannot take it easily. It is because food production is depend on natural resources base. Food production risks arise due to weather, disease and pest outbreaks, cropland loss, and water scarcity. In addition, the effect of greenhouse gases will lead to long-term negative impacts on crop yields and overall agricultural productivity. Next, for the demand side factors, influence of demographics and food demand, and also the diet and food consumption changes are the challenges in achieving food security in Asia. For the influence of demographics on food demand, the balance between food supply and demand is strongly influenced by global population growth. Aside from population growth, the inequality in income distribution and the gap between rich and poor segments of the population also has adverse uh, effects on the change in food demand. So further changes in the diet, for example from rice to cereals, may exacerbate difficulties in crop production and therefore not meet the needs of a rapidly increasing population.
Next, I will explain on the strategies in achieving the food security. In this section, I will focusing on the three elements of the food security, which is the availability, access, and utilization, and thus what are the strategies that have been implemented in order to achieve these three elements. And the first one is the food availability. This element is actually want to ensure that there is enough of production and supply of the food. Therefore, by implementing the strategies into this element, it aims to increase the agricultural production and the productivity. There are two types of strategy that have been identified. Firstly, by encouraging investment for the research and development. This is focusing on the seed modification and genetic modification. These modifications actually allow the seed to grow in any limited condition. Apart from that, the R&D is also focusing on improve or increase the land and water productivity, developing drought resistance and salinity tolerance crops, especially in the countries that experience the drought over the year, and also improving the crop husbandry practices through effective and focused on the extension services. Extension services is actually aimed to provide the information regarding the cultivation, the seed choices, as well as to help the community to face the challenges of the food securities. Apart from that, public investment also important in order to support the farmers by providing them the fertilizers and seed subsidies. This will allow the farmers to increase their production of the agriculture products. And also the public investment focused on the rural development, which provide adequate infrastructure such as transportation and also focus on the value chain. And the next strategy is focused on the technology, which is specifically focused on the crop rotation and diversification, irrigation system, which is actually important to ensure that um, there will be sufficient of water and that can be provided to the crops during if the during the less rainfall during the period of less rainfall. Apart from that, the technology is also important in promote the mechanized farming system. Earlier days, uh, the agriculture sector focused on the traditional techniques. But however, nowadays, in order to meet the demand of growing population, it is necessary to for the farmers especially to change their method so they can use this farming system by using the equipment and machines. Apart from that, the technology is also focused on the increase the water availability because um, there are still some developing countries and also especially poor countries, they face the problem of scarcity of water. Therefore, by developing the technology that could overcome this problem will become an advantage for the farmers. They might some countries they use the water desalination, and also they some countries also recycle the wastewater and they use it for the agricultural activities. The second element is food access. Apart, this element is actually focusing on both physical and economical access so that we could assess the production and supply of the food. It focuses on the three types of strategy. Firstly, it is economic strategy, which focuses on the promoting decent employment in the agriculture sector. Most of the agriculture sector it takes in the rural areas. Therefore, it's important to ensure that all the rural farmers, rural population, to participate in this agriculture sector, so that at the same time they can provide the food and also they can get income from that. Second one is promoting the non-farm economy in the rural areas. Apart from ensure the rural communities to engage in the agriculture sector, it is also important for them to grab the opportunity to work other than agriculture sector. By this way, they can actually generate more income and they can have a stable economic status and enhance and increase their standard of living. Apart from that, the economic strategies focus on provision of credit and incentive. By giving and provide the credit facilities to the rural farmers, they will they afford for the seeds, pesticides, fertilizers, and they are able to purchase the equipment that needed for the production. Apart from that, incentives such as subsidies for the fertilizers can also increase the farmers' productivity and their production. And the second strategy focus on creating an environment that is appealing for the foreign investor. By encouraging the investment, it actually will create more new jobs in the market, and the rural communities they can participate, they can grab this opportunity, and they can improve the income of the people. Next, the intervention aimed at developing value chains for domestic and or export market. Apart from focusing on um, produce the food domestically, at the same time, they can involve in the export market, or in other words, in trading system. Basically, in trading system, there will be a buyer and a seller. So both of them is actually get the benefits from that. For instance, a buyer in this trading system, they will get the benefits which could provide the solution for their hunger, while the seller can get the benefits by generate the income. The third element is food utilization. Although we have enough supply of food and we have a stable physical and economical access to the food, it is also important too to ensure that the food that we consume consists of sufficient nutrition, and also we have to consider about the food safety. Therefore, for this element, the strategies that have been implemented is by giving the education on the identification of the illnesses in the animals, knowledge on the proper slaughtering, food management, food handling, food storage, as well as the food preparation. Secondly, it focused on the food-based strategy, which divided into three programs. So firstly, it is food fortification programs. Fortification meaning that we we add minerals or vitamins into the local crops, such as the maize flour, rice, oil, or sugar. Next is biofortification. Biofortification, it uses the traditional breeding practices and also modern biotechnology to increase the concentration of micronutrients in the crops. Basically, this intervention they want to improve, they want to assess, they want to improve the depletion of the micronutrients, particular with the targeted population. Apart from that, home garden also can be considered as one of their strategies, as it can improve the access towards the micronutrient rich foods. And the third one is environmental strategies, which is by improved management of industrial effluents. If the industrial effluents is not managed properly, it actually will give a big impact, because this effluent will affect the nutrients of the soil, and eventually at the same time it later on will affect the quality, the yield of the agricultural products. Apart from that, regulations of the fertilizers and other agrochemicals. This is important to ensure that every farmers use the fertilizers under a controlled condition, because if not, it will give adverse impact to the environment. For instance, the nitrogen in the fertilizer, it actually will washes into the water bodies. Then it will create the eutrophication and kill the aquatic life. And then we will face with the problem, uh, then it will actually affect uh, the problem in supply and availability of fish for the consumption of the users. In conclusion, it can be said that the main challenges in achieving the food security arises from the supply side, which actually declines the agricultural activities. But at the same time, if we want to make sure a nation to achieve a food secured nation, they have to implement the strategies and give equal consideration to the elements of food security, which is availability, access, and utilization. However, although a lot of efforts have been focused in increasing the agricultural production and productivity, for instance, in terms we give the priority for research and development, for technological, but still it becomes a challenges which at the same time we can identify it from the supply side as we have discussed before. Therefore, to overcome this, it might need a good collaboration between countries, which could be helpful so that every nation can collaborate and can free from the food insecurity. This review actually would like to fill the gaps on discussing and compiling both challenges and strategies in achieving the food securities over the world. And for the future, it is recommended the researcher to focus on studying the effectiveness or the impacts of the approaches or the strategies that have been discussed with the challenges that have been faced by most of the developing countries, because this is important because every country might have different approaches, might have different problems in terms of geographic or demographic. This is the main references. Thank you.